I think it's time to get out the laminate trimmer and see if we can clean up this edge here. Got a bit of squeeze out of epoxy, and in some cases, not a lot, but more of an overhang of the actual deck from the double underneath. Well, son of a, you know what, there's a little notch in the doubler down there that was used to make sure they were kept the right distance apart. Otherwise, it's going quite well. Okay. Well, that doesn't help, that the bearing just blew apart. Okay, well, we're just going to switch to a larger bearing guide. Well, it had a little more power anyways. Luckily, I caught it quickly. We've only taken a slight little tiny notch out of there. It could have very easily just gone right across the planking there. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of sanding. I got to fix that little damaged area there. And I think, you know, and it's kind of suggesting that we kind of just round this all over. I think, which would be kind of cool, is to actually glue on a tiny strip of mahogany, kind of like a bead molding. We'll be getting around corners in here, so I may have to laminate a few pieces of mahogany around the corners. But you know, we've got lots of leftover mahogany strips from other projects. These two pieces mahogany were left over when making the gunnels, so I think that's what we're going to use. So these pieces, I'm going to trim them down. Sort of fit into there, and so they need to be just a shy over ½ inch thick, and then I'll trim them down to make them a bit thinner. I need one straight piece for in here. From the leftover pieces, I'm going to cut some super thin ones to bend into the corners here. Alright, so ½ inch tall and a little bit thicker. Just as I'm not thrilled about seeing the edge of the plywood here on the inside of the deck, I'm not terribly thrilled about seeing the top of the plywood in the box either. So what I'm looking to do here is make a pattern. Goal here is to set up the laminate trimmer with a bearing guide, or we call top bearing guide, to just route out down, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch most, 3/16 of an inch, and then inlay a tiny piece of mahogany in there. Yes, I'm not too worried about it actually sticking to the epoxy. That's the intent, because it'll easily probably knock off, and I doubt very much it's going to tear away anything. So the question will be is, how deep am I going to go? If I go as shallow as possible. So in hindsight, I should have made these much higher, because I wasn't contemplating the length of the bit here. This is not something I'm actually going to do right now, only because my filleting here is still sticky and shavings will all get stuck in there. But we are set for tomorrow, which is not a big deal anyways, because I still have to glue on the trim here, so I can glue the trim in there. I got sealing edges of all kinds of places of epoxy, and then I get back to working on the knees and cleaning up the gunnels. Got all the trim in and all braced and taped and clamped and any which way I could to hold it in place, and now I'm just going to clean it all up, and we need to plane it down and round over a little bit, make these edges a bit softer for people sitting in here. Either, you know, if they're in shorts or whatever, they don't want sharp edges to be under their thighs. So I'm really happy the way the trim turned out on the centerware box. Now I got a bit of an overhang here. I'm just going to need to get myself a new router bit with a bearing bottom guide, so I can run it on the inside and trim the mahogany inlay there. I did have a few small gaps between the laminated strips in here. I guess my tape sort of came loose or whatever. But I'm able to just fill that with a bit of epoxy. It's all going to look fine once it's all sanded down. I think we're ready to put in a deck and the transom knees or quarter knees against the transom and rails. And then we just have to round everything over, sand it down. And then we're ready to probably flip this boat over and work on the exterior of the hull. I've switched the flush cutting bit from the bearing, which we call a top bearing. This is the one I use to trim the plywood inside that little template box. Now I want to trim everything down flush, so I've switched over to the one that has the bottom bearing. And we should be able to run it along this edge here and trim everything, and inside here and trim everything, other than probably some rounded corners. So it gets noisy. Well, I made the same mistake as I did on the top side here. The bearing followed. It's got that notch underneath. So we've got a little tiny place to, I don't know, stick a piece of mahogany in there. But otherwise, other than not being able to really quite reach in the corners here, I suppose, unless I take the guide right off here, which is possible. Come on. I suppose I could just eyeball it through there, which I may do here. All right, and I think the rest is up to just sanding. For the underside, I'm going to take the sander on there because I can't really see. I'm just going to my card scraper. Get rid of lumps and just as much by feel as anything else. Alright, I think with dry, a little bit of sanding, and a little bit of epoxy, that's going to look pretty sharp, I think. Now that I have all of the trim in on the edging of the plywood and the daggerboard box, we can move on to the deck, the quarter knees at the transom, and the mast tube. So that's going to be the next episode. Thank you very much for watching. Hey, if you did enjoy this video, please consider giving me a thumbs up and maybe become a subscriber. Thank you. See you next time.